Podcast.
Welcome to Our Weird World. I'm your host, John Henson, and it is the start of a new month. We're in August, and it's time for the 12th edition of the Weird Fun Bag. Got three just gems of stories today. Oh, God, these are good. You don't know who any of these people are, but we're looking at the stories of Edwin Rist, Dana Brown, and the Tromp family, not to be confused with the Trump family. Or maybe it is. I don't know. Let's get into story time. Story time. Story time. Story time? Story time. We start with the story of Edwin Rist, who was an American flautist studying at the Royal Academy of Music in London, which is one of apparently the most prestigious music schools in the world, which sounds about right. But Edwin wanted to be so much more than being known as the world's greatest flute player. He wanted to do something that would make him truly infamous. So, in 2008, Edwin disguised himself as a photographer and entered the vault at Tring's National History Museum to just kind of get a good idea of the layout, right? He just wants to see what the traffic flow is like, where some of the exhibits were, and why would he want to do that? Well, following a concert the next year in June 2009, Edwin broke past the museum's barbed wire with wire cutters and then began slicing a small hole in a window with a diamond tip glass cutter like he's Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible. Unfortunately, Edwin's nerves got the best of him, and after he cut the hole, or while he was cutting the hole, he accidentally dropped the glass cutter off the side of the building. But he had a backup plan. He basically just smashed the window with a rock, which much less stealthy, but way more effective. So he gets inside. Okay, apparently that did not trip any alarms or anything. And so once he gets inside, he goes over to the museum's vault, breaking several locks along the way. And then finally, he reached his prize, an extensive collection of very rare bird feathers, because like that's the kind of stuff that museums are gonna like laser beam security lock in a vault for some reason. Within minutes, Edwin walked out of the museum with 299 rare bird skins worth $159,000, including several species that had been extinct for decades. He then turned around and started selling the skins to underground bird feather traders because that's a thing that apparently exists. Here's what I've come to learn. There's a black market for everything. Like the world's population is so big at this point that like it's Rule 34 for life. If you don't know what Rule 34 is, don't worry about it. Don't Google it. But like if you need to buy something, there's a black market person out there who can get it for you. And apparently rare bird skins and bird feathers is just a thing that exists on the black market. And honestly, like this is not the first time we have come in contact with illicit bird feather trading. Back in episode 95, we did an episode on some animal problems, and we talked about the Barbary feathers, which came from this special kind of ostrich in Africa, and apparently they had some real cool feathers. So people be geeking out on some feathers, especially from birds that don't exist anymore. So he ended up flipping a lot of these bird feathers, these rare bird feathers, and he used that money to buy himself a new flute because, I mean, he earned it, right? He also like used it to get a better place to live and just like improve his overall quality of life. Edwin was finally arrested 2 years later after a potential buyer became suspicious and asked police to look into how this dude had acquired all of these rare bird feathers, which is a dick move, man. If you're going to the black market, you should probably just assume that the seller of whatever you're trying to buy came by those things very illegally, if not criminally, which is the same thing. I don't know why I said that. You get it. So, because Edwin, my guy, he had Asperger's syndrome. So that makes this story completely understandable now. Police and the justice system in England did not send him to prison. He was given a suspended sentence instead, and he was ordered to pay back the money he had stolen. Now, how much of that money he had, lost after he had purchased things, we don't know. But my dude, my fellow brother in Tism, all right, he's just out there Mission Impossibling himself into museums and stealing bird feathers. And yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Our second story here started on August 29th, 2016, when the Tromp family from a small suburb of Melbourne, Australia, loaded themselves into a silver Peugeot and started traveling north. And the Tromp family is Mark and Jacoba. They're the parents. They're in their 50s. And then they have 3 adult children, Rihanna, Mitchell, and Ella, all in their 20s. They got into Ella's Peugeot, their little car, and they started traveling north. And it was going to be just, at least it looked like just a family road trip. Just going to start driving up the coast, maybe out into the outback, and that was going to be it. It's going to be a fantastic vacation, luxurious, really. Lots of people were saying it's going to be the most incredible vacation ever. Frankly, a lot of great, honest, outstanding people part of this vacation. All right, Mark Tromp, great Tromp. Jacoba, one of the prettiest Tromps in the history of the Tromp family. Rihanna, Mitchell, Ella, great Tromp kids. Greater than Barron, maybe even greater than Eric Jr. Just great, fantastic children, best children in the history of children. I'm certain of it. I know history. A lot of great, honest, outstanding people part of this vacation. Truly, frankly, no vacation quite like a Tromp vacation. All right, sorry. You knew it was coming. You knew it was coming. All right. It's pretty solid, right? I don't know. My accent's a little out there sometimes. Trump impression is pretty close. All right. I'm not a professional, but you get it. Anyway, it's not even spelled the same. I don't know why I had to do it. I had to do it though. The problem is though, this family, they hadn't told anyone where they were going. All right. And because of that, after a few days, when no one had heard from anyone in this family, concerned friends called police. Police went to their home to do a welfare check, and they went inside and they found the family's passports, credit cards, and cell phones all still in the house, which, again, like passports you probably don't need if you're just driving around the country that you live in, but you definitely need credit cards and cell phones to pay for things and communicate, right? So in reality, Mark and Jacoba, the parents, they had become increasingly paranoid that someone was out to kill them and take all of their money. Mitchell Tromp, the only apparent sane member of the family, was the only one who smuggled his cell phone on the trip. So Mark and Jacoba, they've become really paranoid, right? Maybe they think that some angry lib, some Antifa, incel is going to come after them because their last name is similar to, Donald Trump, even though they live on the other side of the world and it's spelled differently, but whatever. Like, they'd become really paranoid that someone was out to kill them and take all their money. So they load the family. They force, which is crazy how, like, 3 adult children would still just blindly listen to their parents like that. And maybe culture in Australia is different, but like, man, in my 20s, especially after I'd moved out of the house, if my parents had come to me and said, hey, look, someone's out to kill us and take all of our money. And we think you might be in danger too. So we need to just leave all of your belongings at home. And we're just going to get in the car. We're going to start driving. We're probably just going to start a new life somewhere. I'm having my parents committed to an insane asylum at that point. I don't care how convincing the evidence is. It's probably not even that convincing because they aren't that great at technology. They're like, okay, my dad's pretty good at technology. My mom knows how to turn a computer on, but like they're not, either one of them aren't savvy enough to concoct and build a mountain of evidence that's convincing enough that I would believe that someone's out to kill them. Right. They would probably just mistake a troll for a legitimate threat. But what I would do, and I'm virtue signaling here because I'm smart enough that I would just immediately go to police, or I would have I'd go to some sort of authority. Because even if they were like, no, the police are in on it. Okay, whatever. I'll call the FBI. The FBI will probably just redirect it back to the state or the city police. Fine, whatever. But you gotta, it's 3 adult children. Now, granted, Mitchell, he's the middle child. He's been ignored his entire life. He doesn't believe any of this is going on. He smuggles his cell phone into the car and tries to at least keep some communication to the outside world. Unfortunately, he didn't even get 20 miles into the trip before Mark found it, and thinking that the cell phone had been bugged so where it was tracking their every move, he forced Mitchell to just throw it out of the car. So after stopping for the first night in Bathurst, Mitchell, he just leaves. He leaves the family. Smart kid. Right? He's not even a kid. He's a full-grown adult at this point. The next day, the remaining 4 Tromps drove east to the Jenolan Caves, which is a popular tourist spot about 2 hours from Bathurst. At that point, Rihanna and Ella finally realized, oh, we're adults. We don't have to go along with this. And so they figured that things got too weird. And then they stole a car to get away from their parents. And that, you got to be real desperate, right? To get away from your parents, that you are willing to commit grand theft auto to get away from your wackadoo parents. And that's what they did. They stole a car and then they drove south to the nearest town near the caves and told police that their parents were missing. I don't know why they couldn't just tell police that their parents were insane and were just at these caves. Go get them. The story soon made it to the Australian media, and people became instantly curious as to how a family of 5 could become separated into 3 different groups on a road trip in their own country, as if this were kind of a plot to a bad family comedy. The fact that they thought that someone was out to get them, or at least the parents thought someone was out to get them, was secondary to this story. Because Australians are weird like that, I guess. Instead, it's this weird black comedy family vacation sequel where 5 family members go on vacation and now they're immediately separated into 3 groups, lost in Australia because they don't have any means of communication to the outside world. It's also not at this point in the story that they're just lost in the middle of the outback, right? In the outback. They're in New South Wales, which is one of the most densely populated states in the country. So after telling police about their parents, Rihanna and Ella decide to go their separate ways. Why wouldn't you stick together with your sister? I don't know. Ella returned back to the family farm. Mitchell got home the next day. So Mitchell and Ella are back together. Police, conveniently, were waiting for both of them at the family farm to just ask some questions and figure out what was going on. Meanwhile, back in the middle of the country in New South Wales, Rihanna had climbed into the back of just a random truck and just chilled. She's just hanging out there for over an hour before the driver came out and found her in what he described as a catatonic state. She no longer knew what her name was or where she was, which she probably didn't know where she was to begin with. So the driver takes her to a nearby hospital where she was immediately put in the psychiatric ward. While all of this is going on, Mark and Jacoba, they are off. They leave the caves and go to Wangaratta. I don't know why I keep saying it like that. Wangaratta, where they split up. And Wangaratta, it's a town somewhat half the distance between Bathurst and their hometown in Sylvan near Melbourne, where their farm is, right? So Jacoba, she turns around and goes back north, and she's eventually found wandering around the small town of Yass. Mark, he stays behind in Wangaratta, where police spot him in the Peugeot, which has been reported missing / stolen, but they spot him near the airport. After briefly being questioned by police, Mark was released into the care of his brother, who was also a police officer, which is even wilder. How, do you just think your own family's part of this? You think your own family's in on it and out to get you? It's crazy. As he was driven away by his brother, the media had just descended on this scene because it's a huge story in Australia at this point. Mark's brother drives him away in a police car. Mark just opens the window and just gives the middle finger to all of the photographers who had gathered at the scene. 6 days after their mysterious vacation had begun, everyone had been reunited. And no one could figure out why this seemingly normal family had just suddenly melted down like that. Initial speculations pointed to chemicals being used on the farm that caused paranoia and hallucinations. The only other plausible explanation was that the family suffered from folie à deux, which is a psychological condition that occurs in close-knit families in which a single person's paranoia just all of a sudden becomes real contagious, like it's the flu, which is a weird phenomenon, but it does happen. After this event, the Tromp family just went back to life as normal. Nothing strange has happened since, and they didn't apparently ever explain why they freaked out in the first place. Like, they didn't explain who they thought was out to get them. They didn't give anything. So, weird. Our final story here. I teased this story a little bit in last week's episode. I love this story so much. Dana Brown, he loved surfing, all right? He spent his life surfing the small waves at Cocoa Beach, Florida. Again, it's Atlantic coast surfing, not going to be super high, 3 to 6 foot waves at best for the most part, unless there's like a hurricane offshore. Maybe you get up to 10 feet, maybe. But Dana, he didn't want or need much in his life, and he spent his adult years just living in a van. He's living that nomad life, and he was deeply religious too. He wasn't like a stoner surfer hippie gnarly bruh. He was a very religious person. He refused to cut his beard or surf on the Sabbath, no matter how great the tubes and the gnar were, bruh. He was committed. He was going to serve the Lord. He was going to rest on the Sabbath. He was also a really good person. When his dad fell ill, Dana moved him into the van, which I don't know if that's the best move, but maybe that was all he could do to take care of him. He probably didn't make a lot of money, so, his dad fell ill. His dad couldn't keep up his own home or take care of himself in his home. So Dana lets his dad live in the van with him. Maybe Dana then just began sleeping in the front seat while his dad had the bed in the back. He would feed and bathe and read to his ailing father instead of just chucking him in a nursing home like everybody else would do. We would do that. I mean, just economically speaking, it's the only thing. It's the most logical solution. It's nothing personal. Anyway, Dana's father, though, eventually died, which was to be expected when he did not get the professional care that he needed because no one could afford it. And the loss left a huge hole in Dana's life. He was physically and emotionally devastated because outside of his father's company, Dana didn't really have anything except the rad waves, bro. And Dana only had one wish in life. It was his bucket list goal to surf out in California, to hit Orange County And man, just maybe check out the Huntington Beach Pier, check out the little gym that they got at Venice Beach, maybe go up to Mavericks or Big Sur, just absolutely shred some gnar. That's the only surf term I know at this point, clearly. And just get absolutely tubular, dude. And he wanted to get out there. And so after his dad died, he didn't have anything left for him in Florida. So Dana turns his van on. He was already in it, if we're being honest. Turns the van on and starts driving across country to California to live out his dream. And he finally arrived in Huntington Beach in November 2016. First thing he does, he grabs his board off the roof of his van and just paddles out into the Pacific, waiting for his dream wave. And by God, he didn't have to wait long. And Dana, who had a long white beard and the body of a 60-year-old Adonis, because surfers, there's no fat surfers. Have you noticed that? All surfers, real good shape. All right. And it makes a lot of sense. You got to have good core strength to be able to balance on the board and swivel your hips. A lot of ab workouts there. Also, I think surfboards might be pretty heavy. So you get a good shoulder workout, good arms, good chest pump. All right. Surfers, great shape. Dana, he's 60 years old. He doesn't look it other than his beard. And so he's just out there, man. And he stands up on his board and he's just surfing his heart out, man. Biggest waves he's ever ridden in his life, bro. He is absolutely living the dream. And I'd like to think that while he was surfing these waves, he found a few moments of complete bliss and euphoria because the dude was living his dream. All right. And I get it, man. Some of you know that I'm super into waterfalls. I'm also super into really tasty buffalo wings. And it was one of my biggest dreams to travel to upstate New York and eat at the original Anchor Bar where buffalo wings were invented, and to see Niagara Falls and to see other just really massive giant waterfalls. And when I was able to do that, I had so many of these moments that I imagined Dana had. I remember sitting in Anchor Bar like, dude, you're living your dreams. This is truly one of the happiest moments of your life. And then I went to Niagara Falls an hour later, and I'm just standing there looking, and it doesn't even seem real how big it is and how much water it is. And I had never been so happy in my life. I was living the dream, and it was just this, just pure, calming bliss that I felt. And I imagine that's what Dana felt as he's just carving up the waves out at Huntington Beach. And then he slammed into the Huntington Beach Pier and died on impact. That's not how you expected that last story to end, was it? Oh, man. Maybe you did. Maybe if you've been listening long enough and you saw me building up and building up and building up, you maybe thought something was coming. You thought it just a big old left turn. That was not a left turn. That was a 180. But yeah, that's why I love that story, because it's so inspirational and then it ends so quickly. In like a sad way, but also, I mean, come on, it's kind of funny, right? Anyway, let's see what we learned today.
What did we learn?
Number 1, an autistic fella in England just masterminded a huge heist of rare bird feathers and then sold them on the black market, which I don't know what part of that story is weirder. Number 2, the Tromp family. Greatest family in Australia, quite frankly. No family better than the Tromps in Australia. Got super paranoid that someone was out to kill them, and then they just got over it and reunited a week later, and everything was fine. It was weird. Then number 3, Dana Brown lived his dream. Even if he lived it for like 30 seconds, I don't know how long he was out there surfing before he smacked into the pier and died. But that's it. That's it. That's what we learned. So next week on Our Weird World, what are we talking about? Oh, yes. So for the next couple of weeks, we're not really talking about individuals or people or anything like that. We're going to go into some more inanimate objects and concepts and things, right? There will be people involved. People will be named because people do things, right? But next week is going to be just a weird episode. This is a weird show. It's weird is in the title. What do you expect, right? But we're looking at some odd organizations, right, from history. Not just people, but groups of people who came together for strange activities, all right? We are looking at the Church of the Hammer, the Ripper Crew, the Order of Hoo-Hoo, and the Prevention of Calling Car Porters George. It's going to, I can already tell you, it's going to be a lot of nonsense next week, but it's going to be a lot of fun. Just, some of these organizations still exist. You could go join them, I guess, if you wanted to. But we will see what they're all about next week. Thank you so much for continuing to listen. Keep telling all your friends and keep it weird.
This is a podcast